And good evening and welcome to the 2D podcast for those that are catching us live. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember we do stream live Tuesday nights, usually at 9 p.m. Central. If you want to be a part of the conversation, you can do it. I got folks lining up right now on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can be a part of the conversation. When we record the show, we do it, like I said, Tuesdays about 9 p.m. Central. Much to get to today. Jeff Chadiha, NFL Network, Eric Eager, Super Sports. My name is Soren Petro from 810 WHB in Kansas City. What's wrong with the 49ers? They've now dropped two in a row. Are they still an elite team? Are the Eagles the best team in the NFC? What about the best team in the NFL? Why can't the Dolphins handle physical teams? They got pushed around by the Eagles for sure. Is it time for Deshaun Watson to his little run in Cleveland? Is time running out there? Buffalo's offense struggling again in the first half. Why? Will the Chargers have a new head coach next year? Is it time to panic about the quarterback position in Green Bay with the Lions exposed at Baltimore? Oh, Eric, I know that's hard for you to deal with. DK Metcalf wearing out his welcome in Seattle. What are we looking at in week 8? We're talking about it right now on the 2 Deep NFL podcast.
You're listening to the 2 Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. 2 Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. 2 Deep is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the 2 Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Thank you, Curtis. Off and running here as we wrapped up week 7, stare down the barrel of week 8 in the NFL, and a team that just a couple of weeks ago we talked about it, guys. It really started back in week 2. The Cowboys were heralded as the team to beat in the NFL as they were off to a very hot start. They immediately lost. They handed that crown over to the Miami Dolphins, who were 3-0, and I think had just hung 70 on the Denver Broncos. They immediately lost to the Buffalo Bills. It was the 49ers a couple of weeks ago who were now the team of the decade, the team of the century, the team that everybody had their eye on. Now they've dropped 2 in a row, Jeff. What's wrong with the 49ers? Is it just, hey, the NFL season happens, or do they have some legitimate concerns?
NFL season happens, and injuries happen. They're missing Deebo Samuel. They're missing Trent Williams. Those are 2 big losses to their offense. And look, I think, do I expect that defense to give up 450 yards every week to guys like Kirk Cousins? No. If they had made a field goal against the Browns, a makeable field goal, 41-yard field goal, they end up winning that game, even with the loss of McCaffrey and Deebo and Trent Williams during that game. So I'm not concerned about them. I think this is part of – I think what we do in the NFL sometimes we want to act like it's college football, and so every game that gets played is a referendum on rankings and college football playoff opportunities. Only 4 teams get the shot at winning. And in reality, all these teams are trying to figure it out as they go and trying to piece together, games with injured players. And they're trying to find themselves. And that's just the way it goes. I think that it was surprising. I certainly didn't think that the Vikings without Justin Jefferson would be a viable team, a team good enough to beat the San Francisco 49ers. But they got it done. Kirk Cousins had a big day, and that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Eric, as simple as that, just football happens, or are we starting to see some chinks in the armor?
I somewhat agree with Jeff, but I do think that there are structural problems. I think it was Josh Dubois who wrote this yesterday, but it's like it's been years since the 49ers have come from behind by more than 2 scores in the fourth quarter of a game. And everybody's like, oh, why did they draft Trey Lance? It's like, well, they saw Patrick Mahomes do that against them in the Super Bowl. And then they're like, what are we missing? And that's exactly what they're missing. So, like, can Brock Purdy play from ahead 13, 14 times a year? And can they get the 1 seed in the conference and be a brick house for most of the time? Yeah. But structurally, when we're sitting here in Kansas City and we're like, we watch the Chiefs and we're like, the Chiefs can win anyway, right? However you slice the game, 19-8, 31-17, they can win any which way. The Niners can win one way. And they can get most teams in that stranglehold in the NFL season, but when they can't, they show their limitations. And I think the Eagles are similar. I think they're less limited than the Niners, but that's kind of like every sub-Chiefs team is limited in that way. So I think it reveals something that's always been true about the Niners, but I don't think it exposed the Niners for being a bad team or anything like that. So I still think they're a top 2 team in that conference.
Okay. That's fair. I think that it does show some of the limits on Brock Purdy, right? Like, I mean, he's had an opportunity the last 2 weeks to bring his team back, and he hadn't been able to do it. We put up the stat about Kyle Shanahan. Like, Shanahan seems to be a guy who is brilliant at coming up at the game plans and play designs. But if it's not going his way, he hasn't shown the ability to get out of it. Now, part of that's because he hasn't had his Patrick Mahomes, but I don't think Brock Purdy's it either. He got the 49ers a look at a field goal. They didn't make it, could have got it closer, needed to get a touchdown. I'll give the kid credit. I don't mind the picks because at least he's trying to make a play.
No.
Right? And I think too often you get check down guys that are just trying to, as Eric's talked about many times, extend the game. Right. Well, we haven't lost yet. That doesn't matter. You got to go try to win it. Purdy's at least making throws down the field. And so I'm open to the idea that he will get there. But right now, he's not there. I think we are seeing the limits of Brock Purdy, aren't we, Jeff?
He's played 13 games.
No, I'd say he's going to be better. But this idea that he's Tom Brady, that's been thrown around way too much.
It took Tom Brady 8 years to become Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he plays like Tom Brady played. They got the same setup that the Patriots had when Tom Brady was young, which is we're going to play with our defense, we're going to play with our run game, and we're going to ask our quarterback to not turn the ball over, to get the ball to the players we want the ball gotten to, and make things happen that way. Somebody made a good point. The Niners are not built to play the way they were playing against the Vikings. They're built to play with like a cage match. They want to get their hands on you. They want to rough you up. They want to roll around on the ground and beat you down. And when they're not able to do that, it gets much harder. But again, a 41-yard field goal in the NFL is a chip shot. Like, you got to make that field goal if you're Jake Moody. And so I'll give him a pass on that. I thought he showed a lot in that game, that Browns game, in having a bad game and having to come back and make some plays. I thought he was playing pretty well against the Vikings. They just couldn't really get the plays they had to make. And then their defense couldn't get a stop. I mean, I think it's very hard for quarterbacks that young playing in that kind of system to be put in that kind of role, in that kind of situation, when you're always expecting your defense to make the plays. Like, 450 yards to the Vikings again without Justin Jefferson is an anomaly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, the answer is, do they have chinks in the armor? Yes. Injuries being the biggest part of it. Deebo Samuel seems to be always hurt, right? Christian McCaffrey, we know, battles injuries. Trent Williams is like 35 years old, and it's not that like, hey, he got rolled up on. I know, but 35-year-old, like 25-year-olds kind of hop around on it for a little bit, run it off on the sidelines. They go back in the game, they play. They're 95% the next week. 35-year-old guys, they don't come back, right? It takes a little while. I think that's reality. But part of it's just, yes, this is football. They're still really good. Like, they're not going to have any problem getting into the postseason. They'll still win the NFC West. The sky is not falling when it comes to the 49ers, but there are real issues, I think, when it comes to the Niners. The Eagles, Jeff, handle business in a big way against the Dolphins. That was a signature type game for them. Offense and Jalen Hurts had some struggles leading up to it. Statistically speaking, they're not dominating. They were. We were talking about the coordinators being a problem for the Eagles. Is it all fixed with the Eagles, and are they definitely the best team in the NFC now?
Oh, right now they are. They got some time to figure it out and play some other big games. But, I was laughing last week when people were talking about, well, they've been figured out. They got a lot of red flags around them. they're still a super talented team, and they got a lot better by trading for Kevin Byard, yesterday. And so that was a huge, huge get for them because their secondary had been a concern. They were missing C.J. Gardner-Johnson from last year at safety, and so bringing in Byard in there, that guy's he hadn't been playing at the level he's played at in the past, but he's still a pretty good player. And you put him on a defense with that kind of a front and those kind of corners next to you, guys who are solid veterans, like he's going to be okay. And so, yeah, I thought they made a huge statement against Miami in showing that, hey, look, we still got a pretty good offensive line, still got a pretty good defensive front. And when Jalen Hurts is running and moving around and improvising, he's pretty good. They got as long as he's doing that, as long as they let him do that, he will be fine. If they're trying to keep him in the pocket and keep him under glass and bubble wrap, they're not going to be as good of a team.
I like Jalen Hurts a lot, and I think he may one day be just a pure pocket guy. Maybe he'll morph into Drew Brees later in his career when he doesn't have his legs. But, I know you gave him a lot of money, Eric, but he's Jalen Hurts when he is a threat to run the ball. Without that threat, he's not the guy that you wanted to pay $250 million to. And I think they're getting back to playing that style of football and recognizing that's how they have to play with him.
Yeah, I mean, he does not look healthy. I joked that everybody talks about how much he squats, and it looks like all he did all off season was squat, and he is moving slower. I think processing wise, he's always been that way. But that being said, AJ Brown is the second wide receiver in NFL history with more than 125 yards in 5 consecutive games. So there's something going on right there. I agree with the Byard selection. We're talking about the third most valuable safety in the NFL over the past few years, which is worth something, I'll say. And I think Howie Roseman is as good as it gets as far as general managers in the NFL. So I think that they're the best team in the NFC. I think there's a ways to go. They're growing into the 2 new coordinators. I think the head coach gives them a chance at all times, and they're physical. And that was the one thing about the Dolphins that was the handicap, right? Not anybody, but we've seen how bad the Chargers are. They beat the Chargers by 1 score. They beat the Patriots. Patriots aren't particularly good. They killed the Broncos, who aren't good at all. And then they beat the Giants. And so, okay, but the 2 real teams they face with real actual players on the line of scrimmage are the Eagles and the Bills, and the games didn't go particularly well for them. So they're not a scary team in the NFL, the Dolphins. They are a scary team when you face off against the also-rans of the NFL.
If you own a business or manage a business, why would you risk accidents and liability in your parking lot? Get your parking lot restriped today. Gann Asphalt and Concrete can give you a brightly striped lot, cutting down on accidents, keeping your parking lot as safe as possible, and allowing you to focus on your business. Parking lot problems are not a problem with Gann Asphalt and Concrete. They've been solving them since 1994. Find them online at gannasphalt.com. The Eagles play with a physicality, Jeff, and it was too much for the Miami Dolphins. First of all, I come back. The brotherly shove, which I love the name for the tush push play, is a big part of who they are. Did you hear, the way that Nick Sirianni talked about that play in post game?
Yeah, parts of it. Yeah,
I mean,
very proud.
Yeah, and I'm with him. I until everybody in the league is doing that, and it's a cheat code. Or the whole league is every team's losing 2 or 3 guys due to injury because of it. They're really good at it, and other teams have tried to do it lately, and they ain't doing it near as well. So it's not some play. I think people should shut up about it being outlawed, but we've talked about that before. But what strikes me is how much they identify with that. They identify with being a physical team. Yeah. They identify that jacks that team up, right? Yeah. They get going, and I think that's a huge thing for them. That physicality is part of who they are, and physicality is a problem for the Dolphins, right? They are the ultimate finesse team, are they not?
They are, but in defense of the Dolphins, I'll say this. They are missing a lot of key pieces to what they want to be. They're down, 3 offensive linemen. They're playing with 3 banged-up offensive linemen. Achan, however you say his name, Achan is Devin Achan is
sounds like a fantasy football message board.
Yeah. And so when they run the football effectively, and that's what I liked about their offense when they were riding high. They were running the football really well. And so they were trying to create that run game to marry it with that deep passing attack. But you're right. They got to prove themselves. And I think once they are able to get Xavier Howard back, once they're able to get Jalen Ramsey back, once Vic Fangio has all his pieces together, I think they'll be a better defense. They won't be a dominant defense, but they'll be able to be a little more physical. Mike McDaniel's cut from the same cloth as Kyle Shanahan. They both love that, that the ability to really impact teams with your run game. But you're right now they're not. They can't be that. And so that game to me was interesting to watch because the Dolphins had some opportunities to score points. They didn't. Tyreek Hill dropped a touchdown pass. The touchdown pass was taken away because of a penalty. But, yeah, they're going to have to do things the way the 2018 Chiefs did it, which is score 40 points a game to win.
Are physical teams the kryptonite to the Dolphins, Eric, or is it just a handful of injuries?
Yeah, the injuries are a thing, but like every team in the NFL is injured, as Matt said. Like it's, some teams deal with it better than others, but like if you sign Teron Armstead to be your left tackle,
yeah,
it's kind of like, oh, you dated the crazy girl at school, and you're worried, you're wondering why she ended up going insane, So
how they get gonorrhea? That's really cute.
Jeff, my favorite part about Jeff on the show is he's down. Me and Petro joke more than Jeff, but then Jeff just hits one on the barrel every once in a while and sends it out. But yeah, like
Jeff,
like,
Jeff, when he shoots, he scores.
Yeah,
like he doesn't. We fall flat. Jeff never falls flat.
But like you went into this thing with Teron Armstead. What did you expect?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Listen, if you're going to put key, positions, if you're going to fill it with 30-plus-year-old guys, you got to expect that. That's why I talk about like Trent Williams. When the 49ers were the thing, I said, you know what, wake me up week, when we get to the divisional round of the playoffs, and the 49ers have Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey.
Can't sit up straight because he's gotten 80 carries a game. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like wake me up when they're healthy and ready to roll, because Brock Purdy ain't picking up the rest of the bunch and taking them across the finish line. And I think, that speaks to like the Dolphins when you say we're all in and we're going to cross our fingers. And listen, maybe Armstead will be healthy at the end. They're hot in the playoff games and that matters. But one thing is also clear, they ain't very good defensively. And I don't think that's changing. To your point, Jeff.
Well, Ramsey coming back should help them.
How much? What do we think Jalen Ramsey at this point in his career,
half a point a game,
is really going to be?
Half a point a game. So you're talking about maybe a quarter of a win. But I think that the thing for me though is more, it's the same stuff that we talk about with the Chiefs. Like if the Chiefs had a horrendous secondary, Karlaftis and all those guys would be a little worse. And I think the Dolphins like defense is characteristic basically of like guys who are good, not great. Bradley Chubb's a good player, not a great player. Jalen Phillips is a good player, not necessarily elite player. Those players become better, I think, with Ramsey in the mix. I do think it does matter a little bit.
Yeah. Listen, I think it will matter, but I just don't know that I don't think you're getting vintage Jalen Ramsey. And I don't know that we've seen vintage Jalen Ramsey for a couple of years. So I question how far that's going to go. Is Deshaun Watson running out of time in Cleveland? I mean, we're already at the point that the honeymoon. Listen, I understand all the money issues, and it's not just an easy exit, but like it's starting to get quite sour in Cleveland with him. Pulling him out of the game. Where does this? How's this end? Deshaun Watson and the Browns, Jeff.
Well, it didn't end for another 3 years, right? It's got a lot of dead cat money coming if it ends before that. But yeah, he looks like a player who's missed a lot of time and who's playing in an offense that they're going to have to make a decision about how they want to play with him, because he is a quarterback who's always been at his best. His entire career, really, since he emerged, has been playing in shotgun, wide open, RPOs, a lot like Mahomes, run around, make plays, and he's in a lot more of a structured offense, having to go under center, having to feed a running back, having to do things that aren't comforting for him. Some quarterbacks just aren't good taking a snap, turning their back to the defense, and throwing on time. Like that's not his game. And so, and it's not his. It even hurts him more when he hasn't had a chance to play, for a long period of time. So, yeah, I think that I'm still hopeful that he can work this out. But yeah, right now he's got one good game in his time with the Cleveland Browns and a lot of injuries. And PJ Walker has won more games this year than he has. So that's not a good place to be, or as many games as he has.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you got to play a little bit at the end of last year. You're supposed to be knocking the rust off. You get an off season, all the OTAs, minicamp, everything. You're supposed to be back to being good Deshaun Watson. Why is that not happening, Eric? And is this, Jeff brings up a great point. Is it just misuse of the skill set?
I'll say this, and this is also part of my thesis on like guys like Sam Howell and stuff. Deshaun Watson had one really good year. And he had a few years where he was, impressive, but not, you look at his like PFF grades, right? Like 70, 80, 80, and then the 90 in the 1 year that he had. He had 27 turnover worthy plays in that 2019 year, the year that they made the playoffs and had the Chiefs on the ropes. It was just 14 in the 2020 year. I think that we over-index on that one season, and he's always been a guy that's taken a lot of sacks. Last year, 27% pressure to sack ratio, over 20% in his 3 full years as a starter before then, 24% here. Time to throw has always been 3.06, 3.03, 2.98. Last year, 3.31, 3.16. Like, he's a guy that's not decisive in an offense. And Jeff's right. Like, that offense wants you to hit the back foot off of play action and find the players in rhythm. And he's more of a kind of street ball guy. And that's not that effective sometimes. And especially now in the NFL where everybody's playing too deep, right? He was suspended when the whole league decided they were going to run a different defense for Patrick Mahomes and then by extension, everybody else. So I just think it's like his skill set's a mismatch for not only the Browns, but also the whole league. And, there's only really one way out of this. And it's funny, he has, $46 million guaranteed paragraph 5 the next 3 years. Meaning, like, that's not signing bonus money. That money can be traded. If there is a team that is like, we can fix him, and Cleveland wants to send over, like if Cleveland sent a first and a second over with him, that money would go with the other team. So there is a way out of it. It's just going to be another like horrendous trade that's going to end up blowing up in their face, Cleveland and their front office.
And you are right, because it is the whole thing about getting him just $1 million in the first year, so he wouldn't really be fined. Is got all that money there and it's guaranteed. And so yes, if you could find a taker, and like you said, you're proposing at some point somebody they pay someone with a first and a second to get rid of them.
The problem is it can't be next year. It's probably, and they're going to do the same thing. Like, they're going to take that $46 million. They're going to convert it to signing bonus, drop it down to 8 or whatever, throw the extra 38 or so into the next 3 or 4 years and continue to kick the can down the road. There's going to be some poor team that is going to come around and be like, well, I guess 1 year, $46 million for Deshaun Watson in 2026 is not going to be that much money. And Cleveland's going to have to send a pick over to get rid of him. But that's going to be the eventual end unless he turns it around. And I'm kind of with I don't think he turns it around. I think structurally the league has changed. We're seeing it with Josh Allen, right? And Deshaun is just a smaller, weaker Josh Allen. And we're seeing with Josh Allen, like the playground style football, like it doesn't lead to the efficiency that you need to win offensively this year.
Jeff, you were rumbling there for a second. Do you see anybody looking at him and going, okay, we can get it going?
New England Patriots, Bill O'Brien.
Yeah.
Reunite them.
Oh, yeah, because it was
reunited because it feels so good.
Yeah.
Get to that record.
What about the Falcons? That's where everybody thought it was going to end up being. They like somebody who's desperate for the quarterback. I think might make that move.
Yeah, the Falcons really know what to do with blue chip talent on offense.
It sounds like you just said the good news is they wouldn't be getting blue chip talent. You don't think Deshaun Watson's very good?
Yeah, true. That's true. But like the Falcons have spent 3 top 10 picks on position players that barely do anything for them. Like I feel like they would bring him in and run the same offense they run with Des Ridder.
With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project coming with a written warranty. GAN Asphalt and Concrete keeps your parking lot safer, helps your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find them online right now at ganasphalt.com. Buffalo's offense can't do anything in the first half. Why, Jeff? And is this something that you think is going to continue? Or again, just one of those kind of cyclical things like we talked about with the Niners? They'll get it together eventually.
Buffalo's one of those teams that seems to always be going through some kind of adversity in the middle of a season. Like last year, it was Allen's elbow, and that obviously Von Miller got hurt. The year before that, Allen was not playing very well, and then he got hot toward the end of the season, and they had that big epic game against the Chiefs in the playoffs. I feel like it's I think Ken Dorsey still hasn't figured out how to make it work with him, and when you look at their play calling, it is very much a boom or bust mentality. It's either we're going deep and Josh got to make some great play, or we're going to hand it off. And there's not a lot of easy throws. And not a lot of stuff where just let's get like 6-7 yards and keep the chains moving. Now, I think when he was playing well, they went to that, but they tend to stray away from that and get back into this place where, he wants to be Superman. And quietly, the Dawson Knox injury is a big deal for them. Now, maybe the young tight end Dalton Kincaid takes off and he's played well of late, but having that safety blanket in the intermediate passing game is big for him. And I just feel like, again, I think Ken Dorsey, every few weeks, I get reminded that he's not Brian Daboll. And I'm sure Brian Daboll wishes he could be back in Buffalo coaching Josh Allen right now instead of coaching Daniel Jones. But they were the perfect marriage. A really creative offensive coordinator and a really kind of like what's the word Von Miller used? A Mustang of a quarterback. And it's just sometimes it's hard to make that work. I don't want to turn this into a Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid type thing, but Andy Reid, the marriage that he's had with Patrick Mahomes is really so much about trust and understanding and growth and development. And Patrick Mahomes could easily be what Josh Allen is, and he's not, because he got a coach in Andy Reid who knew how to make the most of him.
Well, I think for Chiefs fans, they hope to never know what he'd be without Andy Reid.
Yeah.
We've seen what Andy Reid is without Patrick Mahomes, and that's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Is what he is. We haven't seen, and maybe I think at some point we'll probably see Patrick Mahomes without Andy Reid. Eric, is that the problem? Defensive coach don't have the trust factor. Offensive coordinator changing over. Josh Allen's not as good. What do you see? What's the problem? Why so slow starting?
Just like Jeff made a good point, there's nothing easy in that offense. I think like every once in a while you see a drive come through where they go Latavius Murray, James Cook, and they're like picking up 6 yards at a time, and then they just like go away from it. I don't know if they're like physical enough in the offensive front, like the Chiefs are or something like that. So it's just like the easy stuff is not easy for Josh Allen some games, and especially of late. Like I think that when you look at like blowing teams out, they're as good as anybody. But when it comes to like needing a completion, it's just not it's just not like it's just that's the slight difference between them and Kansas City. When Kansas City needs to get 4 yards, they get 5. When the Bills need 4 yards, sometimes they get 40 and sometimes they get a sack.
Yeah, they miss Cole Beasley a lot, and he's been gone for a while, but he was the guy Josh Allen trusted. I'll throw it to you quick and you'll get me 5-6 yards. Like not having that kind of an option in the offense is a huge detriment to him.
We were championing that they weren't running Josh Allen and that they were going to keep him healthy. Is the problem that they're not running Josh Allen as much?
I don't think that's the problem. I think he's going to run at some point. That's going to be his instinct. The problem though, when he runs, he puts himself in harm's way when he runs. So it's fine to run and get down. It's fine to running out of bounds, but he's running as if he's like, King Kong wanting to step on people, all the way down the field. He runs like he's Isaiah Pacheco. And so, but again, it's the way they built that team, and he's got a lot of the same problem Deshaun Watson has, in that when you put him in these wide open offenses, it's so hard for some of these quarterbacks to want to accept that. It's good to be in 2nd and 5. It's good to be in 3rd and 3. It doesn't always have to be 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, miss a big shot. It's they got to get back to that. However they do it is fine, but it's just they got to get back to it.
Yeah. We'll see. I think they're too good a team to be in a funk all the way, but
No.
they don't seem to be able to get on that roll and be that top team. I think, unfortunately, last year may have been the year, and everything that went on with DeMar Hamlin and everything, we may never know what it would have been had that not happened. A lot of people thought they rallied around it, but
can we? Yeah. I mean, the Bills are still very much a Super Bowl contender in the AFC. Like,
yeah,
I think that they have. I mean, we saw the Chiefs that we cover. They were 3-4 at this point 2 years ago, and were a meltdown in the second half away from making the Super Bowl that year. The injuries are a concern, because that was, there are guys that are not coming back for that team, like Milano, and they probably do need, among all these teams, probably do need to go out and get a DeAndre Hopkins, to the point that we just made about, getting a 5-yard completion when you need one. But I think that what's saving the Bills is, even like we just talked about the Dolphins, like they're a game out with the tiebreaker in hand. Like this is still very much a contender, and they're, we talk about the math too. Like they're undefeated in games decided by multiple scores. They're 1-3. Like they've been 30% in the last 2 or 3 years in games decided by one score. At some point, that's going to turn around for them, and they'll start winning those games. I still think they're a contender, even though right now they're not as strong as they have been.
Come on, you're the math guy. I mean, isn't when you consistently lose close games, that's a sign that either the coach or the quarterback is wrong?
I think being in a lot of close games, I think being in a close game against the Giants is meaningful. I don't think that whether or not the official calls pass interference is anything you can control. I think
I'm with you, and don't even bring up the officials, because I'll go for the suplex on that one, because they're just complete ass in the NFL. But you can't always be in that spot. Like at some point, make the play.
But they've done a really good job of winning multiple. Like they've won more of their fair share of multiple score wins over the past 2 or 3 years. It's literally that they've been terrible on those, end of game situations. So to me, I do think that it's going to, to me, they still remind me of the 06 Colts, where we're kind of bored with them, to your point of oh, their time is come and gone. You should have beat the Patriots, should have beat the Steelers, all this kind of stuff. And then randomly they put it all together for a month, and we realized that it's just a lot more noisy in the NFL. Like you talk about winning somebody else's Super Bowl. If this is truly the Chiefs' year, then we, as Chiefs fans, we got to be a little scared, don't we?
Yeah. Listen, I think the Bills are a very good team, and if they're hot and they're right, they're a dangerous team. If a couple of things go their way, I can see them in the Super Bowl. I picked them for the Super Bowl this year. I like their team. The Von Miller thing's getting old already. He's old, which is making that whole situation get old. And, I don't know. I still wonder about the Diggs and Allen relationship and everything that's going on there. It still doesn't look right for whatever reason in Buffalo. And it's definitely not right with the Chargers. 2-4 is unacceptable when you give $250 million to a quarterback. Is Brandon Staley, are we watching the final days of Brandon Staley as the head coach of the Chargers, Jeff?
Yep. I said it this morning on the radio, and guys start growing beards in that position.
Jesus.
It's never a good look, It's never a good look. He's starting to look like Gandalf the Great from Lord of the Rings. He's like Todd Haley style.
Well, that's two
strikes. By the way, Todd Haley no longer coaching the Memphis Showboats anymore, by the way. Pour one out.
What I don't know what happened, how that could possibly be.
It just got, I think that the merger, I don't know if Memphis is going to have a team or whatever, but yeah, he's done coaching. So,
by the way, that's 2 strikes in against Staley, because one, he's not fat enough. He clearly works out or runs too much to be successful on my grading scale, and your inability to shave scale. That's it. Eric, you got any other quirky things like this you want to throw in with me and Jeff on this?
No, I mean he's 100% the gambler that like has made a lot of good bets that have lost and now is like,
yes,
I need to work. I need to stay up later. I need to stop looking presentable. I need to go back to the lab. And it's like, no, just keep doing what you were doing. And then eventually, what goes around comes around. And he's like gotten a little gun shy, right? And then you lose a 27. I mean, we forget that they blew a 27-point lead in the playoffs, man. Like that's, when you start to like really add it up, the Brandon Staley era has been a real privilege for San Diego fans.
Oh, here we got to it. Pig says Atlantic's analytics say it's better to not shave. He's saving time.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say about them is that a lot of those guys were around for Anthony Lynn. And so there certainly is a point that every team or roster reaches when they know, this ain't really working with this guy. Let's wait him out, move on to the next one. And it feels like they're getting to that place. Just the way they played that game. If you were to look at some of the body language, some of the look at the eyes of Justin Herbert coming off the field. They look like a team that's in a bit of a fog. And when you're 2-4 and in this conference, they can add to. They can look up and say, are we really going to catch the Bengals or the Dolphins or the Browns, the Steelers? Like, we're not catching the Chiefs. Like, that's over. And so, yeah, I feel like they're going back to that meltdown in the playoffs and the failure of the J.C. Jackson situation. It feels as if they're just at a place where people are starting to check out.
Well, let me ask you both this. Their next 4 games. Home for the Bears, at the Jets, home for the Lions. Tough game, but it's at home. At the Packers. What are they after 4 games? They're 2-4 right now. Jeff?
Oh, that's 4 more games at 2-4. So that would be 10 games total. I think they're 4-6. I think the Jets game is a huge, huge game for them. They lose that game, it's done.
Have they ever fired a coach in the middle of the season? I don't think so, right?
No, not that I know of.
I think they ride it out with him. I think it's Jeff probably.
But what are they after the next 4 games? Bears, at Jets, Lions, at Packers. I think this is an important stretch.
I think it's 2-2. An actual good team would go 3-1, and they would just lose to Detroit. But like San Diego is going to lose to every team but Detroit.
Yeah.
And be,
They'll beat the Lions and lose to the other.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's how it goes, right?
If they're going to have anything, they've got to go 3-1 in the next 4. That's the key for the Chargers. That has to happen. Is it time to panic at quarterback in Green Bay, Jeff?
Yes, and time to panic because he's on basically a 1-year deal. like if he doesn't work out here, I don't know if they're able to stomach the idea of moving forward. And I don't think that's his fault, by the way. I feel like they've got a really bad situation where you've got a young quarterback who's trying to work with young receivers, and there's nobody he can really trust. Some of the plays he's made, some of the mistakes he's made have not been his fault, where guys are running the wrong route. There's miscommunication. But the bottom line is he's thrown 6 picks in the last 3 games, and they scored 50 points total. And the pick he had in that game against the Broncos was awful. They had 3 points with 2 minutes left to go in the third quarter. And Matt LaFleur's been talking about trying to build an identity that hasn't happened yet. And I know Aaron Jones has been banged up. That's a big part of this. I know that the Bakhtiari's been banged up. That's a big part of this. But the mistake they've made with him is not giving him somebody he can trust, like, whether it's Travis Kelce, whether it's Stephon Diggs, whether it's Amari Cooper, whatever it is. Every young quarterback needs somebody they can trust, and he doesn't have that right now.
No, it's Kurt Benkert actually wrote this. He's a former Packer backup under LaFleur, and he was just like, when you watch Aaron Rodgers, so the thing when they went from Favre to Rodgers, it was Jennings, Nelson, Jennings, Nelson, James Jones, and and he was talking about when you think about timing too. He said there was that throw at the end of the game where if he puts it in like a slightly different spot or the wide receiver comes back, it's pass interference, you're kicking a field goal in Denver to win. And like he watched Aaron Rodgers operate with receivers Aaron trusted and who came back to the ball in the right way and were in the right landmarks. And so not only are you trying to like become who you are, but you're doing so with wide receivers that aren't helping you out at all. And I think that that's a big, like, I'm not like, I thought Jordan Love would be better than this, but I also think that there's a significant excuse here for them. So
Vikings, Rams, at Steelers, Chargers, their next 4. It's an important 4 games before they go to the Lions and then host the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's important for them to get things going. I will say this. I mean, they've lost 4 games, 3 of them by 1, 4, and 2 points. I mean, they're not that far away even right now, right?
They also have a win by 1 point. Like it's every single point spread in their games. If you look at the point spreads, they're all like 1. They played in pick'ems. So to your point, like this week against the Vikings, they're a point underdog in Lambeau against a Vikings team that is, I've seen this song and dance before. I grew up here. Like they will lose on Sunday. Like there's nothing more Minnesota Vikings than beating the Niners on a Monday Night Football and then going and laying an egg against an inferior team. So like the Packers are going to be playing coin flips all year. I think we're going to be asking this question about Jordan Love all the time.
Yeah, I do. Listen, good football teams find a way to win close games. They're not doing that. They're not a good football team right now, but I think the potential is there. It is his first go around as a starter. I do like LaFleur, and so I give him a shot to get this turned back in the right direction. But I think Jeff's right. Like, the most hidden thing about the Patrick Mahomes success story isn't Andy Reid. Everybody knows that. Isn't the apprenticeship year under Alex Smith. Everybody saw that. It's the fact that he stepped into a ready-to-roll sports car of an offense with a good offensive line and lots of weapons and veteran guys, like a Travis Kelce to be a security blanket. And that's not there for Jordan Love. I think that's a great point. From Jeff, were the Lions, let's stay in that division, Jeff, were the Lions exposed by getting just absolutely bombed by the Baltimore Ravens?
I feel like that was just one of those days. You're going to have games where you're off and they're on, and that's what it was. Ravens had their A game going, and the Lions had their F game going, and that's as simple as it can be. I watched all that game, and it was over from the start. Like they really couldn't do anything with Lamar Jackson. They couldn't get anything going offensively, and credit to Lamar and the Ravens offense. That was finally the offense we've been waiting to see from them. Todd Monken coming over as the OC there. But you look at the Lions' next 5 games, and they should win all 5 of those games based on the records and the points for the likely point spreads. They should be a 10-2 team by the end of that stretch. And so if you're talking about them being 10-2, the start of the year, they would take that all day long. And so it's ugly, but I think Dan Campbell's the kind of coach who can use this as motivation and let them know, hey, yeah, we're a better team, but we can still get our asses kicked and get humbled if we don't handle our business.
There was talk about the Lions being in the discussion for being the best team in the league before that happened against the Baltimore Ravens, Eric, but their plus 23 point differential now is only 9th best in the NFL. Are they just a pretty good team standing on top of a bad division? Or are you still buying that this is a team that can be elite? You did pick them to go to the Super Bowl.
I mean, in the last month, we saw Dallas get shown the 50 states by the Niners. We saw the Niners lose to the Browns and the Vikings, 2 teams, not particularly great football teams. The Eagles were beaten by Zach Wilson and the Jets. So I think the magnitude of loss Sunday was jarring. That being said, the Ravens are kind of like 1 or 2 plays away from being 7-0. And I think the reason I liked Detroit in that game Sunday was I was like, everything I knew about the Ravens wasn't happening. They were kicking field goals. They were messing up kick returns. They were dropping passes. Lamar was missing throws at times. And like Lamar's generally played fantastic this year, probably 2nd best quarterback in the league. And then like the whole thing like came together for them, and it kind of like, and the Lions had the ball for like 3 plays in the first quarter. So it was just kind of one of those games. I agree with Jeff. I think that they're still a top 3 or 4 team in the NFC. and they'll continue to grow into this. But make no mistake, they're not proof of a game like that for sure.
Jeff, how about the question about the Ravens? I mean, plus 74 point differential, that's second best in the league behind only San Francisco. Is this a team that has quietly got their best edition of Lamar Jackson and the talent around him?
Well, look, they're playing phenomenal defense, probably the most underrated defense in the league for a defense that's probably top 3 or 4 in points and yards. And he's done a pretty good job of playing through a lot of adversity around him. I mean, who hasn't been injured for this team? I mean, with J.K. Dobbins is gone, Odell's been banged up, Rashad Bateman's always hurt, Andrews has been hurt, offensive line problems. So he's managed it well. I guess I'm just skeptical. I have to see him playing this way in December, January, before I'm really buying in. And again, I think someone just mentioned it there. Like he's been banged up the last couple of years. He hadn't finished the season the last couple of years, and so that gives me pause as well. So I like Cleveland and Cincinnati more than Baltimore, but I respect what they did against Detroit, and I respect what they can become if you can keep playing this way.
Real quick on DK Metcalf. I had on Dick Fain, does the afternoons on KJR in Seattle, and we were talking about all the penalties. There's personal foul penalties, all the stuff that's being racked up with DK Metcalf. There's a guy, he's a lifer. He's a Seattle guy. Those are his teams. And he said DK Metcalf's act is wearing thin in Seattle. Like that. Super talented guy. Numbers aren't the same with Geno Smith as they were with Russell Wilson. Like, how does this play out?
Well, I think one part is that he's injured. I think drafting a player in his position in the first round was not like a good, like probably didn't take that the greatest. Having a guy like Lockett who also makes money for that team it's complicated. I also think Geno is just simply not like the red zone quarterback that they've won. Like Geno was fantastic for a lot of last year. He's been pretty good this year, but once they get in the red zone, it's a complete joke. And I don't know, that can't make DK Metcalf, who probably worries about his touchdown counts, that happy.
Yeah. I mean, DK Metcalf going to be on a trade block this offseason? Could he go at the trade deadline?
I'd be surprised if that happened, just because they're in a pretty good place and they need him. They drafted Jackson Smith and Jigba probably to be a successor to Tyler Lockett at some point. And Metcalf is a weapon. He's a talent. But I think Eric's right. He playing with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was all about giving his guys opportunities, and he would throw it up and let them go get it. And they're playing differently with Geno. And a lot of that frustration, I think the game I saw that you're talking about, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, but you could tell he was like, I'm open. Throw me the dang ball. Like, what's going on here? And so they got to find a way to reel that in. But that's always been one of the knocks on Pete Carroll for years. Throughout his career has always been that he's such a rah-rah, love you up, you're my dude type of coach that when guys start getting unhappy, he is not very good at controlling them. And so that's been historically an issue in Seattle, where you see guys who are stars there start getting pissy, and they get sideways in a hurry.
Yeah, no, I can see that happening. They need him to be what he's been, but that he needs Geno Smith to be more of what he was last year. And even last year, 30
first half of last year, not even second, like just first half of last year.
Yeah, people started kind of figuring out what was going on, and I think the Seahawks are finding out, ooh, okay, this is all of Geno Smith, huh? This is how things work. All right, we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, by the way. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get it restriped. Take care of those potholes. Make sure you leave a good impression. First impression, last impression with your clients, with your customers is going to be coming and going from your parking lot. Let Gann Asphalt and Concrete make sure you make a great impression. Go to GannAsphalt.com. Week 8, what are we looking at? Jeff, you got something that's popping for you?
Bengals, Niners. Something's got to give. The Bengals coming off a bye. Niners, 2 straight losses. Both teams need this game in a bad way. So we'll see if the Bengals really can start moving in the right direction, and we'll see if the Niners can take 3 losses in a row.
Okay.
Are you guys surprised at all that the point spread in that game was 6 and now it's 5.5, but it was 6?
For who?
Niners.
Really? Wow.
No, I'm
Because
not.
the Bengals off of a bye, going to San Francisco on a short week against a team that lost to Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football is 5.5 point favorites. That feels fishy to me.
To what way? You think it should be lower? So
I don't like the Bengals,
Niners?
and I think their fans on Twitter are abhorrent, but like I would take Cincinnati in that one.
You're saying the Bengals are favored?
No,
the Niners.
Niners.
I'm getting 5.5 with the Bengals. Like if they lose by 3, I'm FanDuel.com/Petro.
So who are you picking in that game then, Eric?
I mean, I'll take Cincinnati to cover that game. Feels reasonable. The one that I like, the one that I'm looking for, Vikings Packers is always fun, but both teams suck. The one where both teams kind of suck, but I don't think I'm going to be able to.
Gig. I'd take the two teams that suck and give you the reason why it's a fun game to watch.
But I'm going to watch one. I think you might pick this one because you're a sicko like me, Petro.
Okay.
I don't think I'll be able to look away from Browns Seahawks.
Yeah.
Like PJ Walker is in. That'll be intriguing. Geno Smith against that Browns defense could be a privilege, right? I think that's going to be an interesting game for me.
I've got a number of them that I always think are interesting. I always seem to find a reason to like it just about every game that they can put out there. But I do think Raiders Lions is of note. If the Raiders would handle business against the Lions, all of a sudden they're back to being kind of good, and more so the Lions would then have problems. So I think it's very important for the Lions to beat down the Raiders, right, and reestablish themselves and reestablish it to themselves that they're one of the bullies on the block. So they need to bully around the Raiders in that game. But I'll go to one of my crappy games, Chargers Bears. When we're talking about Brandon Staley being out, if the Chargers can't beat the Bears. And by the way, the Bears blow, and they're still going to outnumber Charger fans like what, 2-1, 3-1 in LA. Like, how awful is that? A 2-5 Bear team is going to play a home game in LA.
Starting a Division II quarterback from Shepherd University is.
Yeah.
I mean,
they played well against the AFC West, right?
If Justin Herbert can't beat that kid,
Tyson Badgett.
Come on. Right? Like, am I wrong?
No, I mean, but look, San Diego will find a way to lose that game.
Well, that's what that's horrific. And then you start talking about Staley's out.
Can we talk about how I think I said this last week. The NFC South is projected to have 3 fewer wins than any other division in all of football, and they have so far played the easiest schedule in all of football collectively and have the easiest schedule moving forward. The New Orleans Saints, the preseason favorite to win that division, is currently a 1.5 underdog to Gardner Minshew and that Colts team.
Wow.
You need to contract the NFC. I've never been a guy who's been like, oh, no, don't give a home playoff to a division winner. This might radicalize me to the other side of that argument. That is my boss, Thomas Dimitrov, is in the office all day being like, if this division was this easy when I was here, we'd have rings on the finger. But like now he's gone and he's got to watch like a JV, like called the NFCS because it's the FCS of the NFL.
By the way, can we update our predictions on who will be the number 1 overall pick?
Who will have it?
Who will have it?
Cardinals.
Just to refresh your memory, what we said, what was it, 2 weeks ago we made these picks? Jeff was on the Giants. They won last week to get their
covered 2 games in a row.
I was on the Bears. They won, but I'm largely on the Bears because Carolina sucks, and they've got Carolina's pick. Carolina still has yet to win a game, and Eric Eager on the Arizona Cardinals, and they very much looked apart on a 4-game losing.
That team is serious about getting the number 1 pick.
They are. But very soon, so's Carolina going to be like, okay, let's do it. and take Caleb Williams. I understand.
Carolina's got to give that pick to the Bears.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. I had it backwards.
Carolina's going to win some games. Like that division is they're playing in the JV of the NFL. They'll win the NFCS. Emphasis on FCS.
I actually think you're right now because the Bears can't have nice things, and so it won't work out for them. Yeah,
look, they get to play the Packers again and the Vikings again. That division stinks too. Like this. The Cardinals are the only team, unless you are serious about getting the first pick, you are not getting it. And there's only one team that is serious, that is intentionally getting that first pick, and that is the Cardinals.
I think the Bears will end up picking 4th and 5th, and 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks will go 1, 2, 3. That's what will happen because that's what always seems to happen. All right, remember, we're brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. For Jeff Chadiha, the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Too Deep NFL Podcast.